Hey y'all, welcome back. My name is Tiara and I am the owner of Black Teacup. In this week's video, I am going to be showing you guys how I created this practical magic themed tumbler. I was asked to create this as a gift and I absolutely love the way it turned out. Everything I used to create this tumbler will be linked down below. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know. Thanks for watching and let's get started. All right, so we're going to get started with a 20-ounce skinny. I am going to go ahead and sand this tumbler using my palm sander, and then I'm going to wipe it down with some alcohol. After my tumbler is all clean, I'm going to take this painter's tape. It's a very thin painter's tape. It will be linked down below. And I'm going to tape off half of my tumbler. And for this, I am just eyeballing it, trying to make sure it's equal parts on either side. You just want to get your tape all the way down on both sides and across the bottom. So it should look something like this. So next we are going to spray paint half of our tumbler. It's going to be an ombre, so black, Oasis blue, and navy blue, all by Rust-Oleum. So I'm going to have the very top of my cup black, and then it's going to fade to navy, and then it's going to fade to that lighter blue. It's going to be the night sky, pretty much. So that's going to be one half of the tumbler. And we are just base painting for our glitter to go right on top. So the paint job does not have to be spectacular. Just make sure you get good coverage. And here is the look I was going for with my spray paint. It's kind of going to be like the night sky. Once your paint has dried completely, you'll want to take your cup in and measure off the back section. The back will have 4 different colors of glitter. So what I'm doing here is taking my ruler, and I believe my cup was about 8 inches. So I did each section about 2 inches. So I took a Sharpie and I put a line at the 2-inch mark from the ruler on the cup. And you'll want to make lines on both sides of your tape, and this is what you should be left with. See, I have lines on that side and this side. So when I go to connect my tape, my line should be fairly straight going across. So I'm just going to take my painter's tape and connect those 2 lines that I made with my Sharpie. And don't worry about the overspray. You see that blue on the back of my cup? It doesn't matter. We're going to go over that with white anyway. So what I'm going to do is take some saran wrap and mask off the back of my cup, that blue portion, because I don't want to get any white on that. So I'm going to take some saran wrap and some painter's tape or masking tape and just tape that portion off. Once you have that taped off, you can take it outside and spray paint that back section with the 4 sections that we just created. Spray paint that white. So for this cup, I decided to just do it white and then go back over with acrylic spray paint to spray paint each individual section. If you wanted to, you could spray paint each individual section. It really doesn't matter. It's up to you. But I definitely wanted to base coat each section before I added the glitter. So after the white paint has dried, you can go ahead and remove that plastic wrap, but leave your painter's tape. Now I'm going to be using Arteza acrylic paints to base paint each section. I know I need yellow, mint, lavender, and pink. The paint job does not have to be perfect, but try not to get into the blue section on the back side of the cup. This will allow our glitter to really pop and shine through and make sure we have good coverage by base painting each section. I believe I let this cup sit for a couple hours to make sure it's completely dry before we move on to adding glitter. And of course, we're going to be adding glitter using the epoxy method. I'm going to glitter the back half of my cup first, the nighttime sky portion, and then we'll move on to the sections. So here I'm just taking a gloved finger and I am just putting epoxy on the parts that I want to glitter first. So I know the bottom section and this back section, I want to do the blues and the black. So I'm being very careful to only get epoxy in that section. You don't need a lot of epoxy, just a fingertip, like a little epoxy on your fingertip, and that should be enough to spread it around. So you're going to see me put out 4 glitters. However, I only used 3 of them. I used Weekend at Bernie's by Peachy Olive, Be Bejeweled by Peachy Olive, and Batman by Peachy Olive. I will have all of those linked down below. One thing that I noticed that I should have done was spray paint the entire bottom of my cup blue, but I did leave one half of it white. But I end up going back over that with a second layer of blue glitter to cover that white portion. But other than that, you want to go ahead and start glittering your cup. I started with my lightest color first at the bottom, which is Bejeweled by Peachy Olive, and I am just tapping it out very slowly. As I was getting my bottom right here, I realized I should have base painted the entire cup blue, but it's okay, it's an easy fix. So after Bejeweled, I'm going to go ahead and go in with my Weekend at Bernie's and ombre that into this Bejeweled. For the next color, you're just going to hold your cup at more of an angle and tap it down so that it falls and cascades kind of naturally. And then finally, I'm going to take my black, the Batman glitter, and also cascade it down by tilting my cup at an angle. Sometimes it helps to just pour the glitter in a cup. That way you have more control. But here I'm doing it straight from my bag. It's up to you, whichever is easier. You just want to make sure you're not pouring the glitter. You want to like disperse it slowly. And then I'll go over the whole thing with some blue just to make sure everything is nice and good and covered. All right, so now we're going to move on to the back section with the 4 different colored glitters. We're going to be using Belieber, St. Jude, and Mint Chip, all by Peachy Olive, and Coral by Lily's Glitter Shop. Now, when I'm applying the epoxy to these 4 sections, I'm going to do one section at a time using the epoxy method. So once again, I'm going to dip my gloved finger in a cup or a little small cup of epoxy and just rub it on each section one at a time. And then glitter that section, and then we'll do it again for the next section. You just want to be very careful at your like the lines and the creases of where the tape is, because wherever you put the epoxy, that is where the glitter is going to stick. And here I am just adding glitter to each section, one section at a time, using a gloved finger, apply that epoxy, and then apply that glitter. After we're done applying the glitter, while it's still wet, like immediately after, I'm going to remove my painter's tape. This is one of my favorite parts. It's so satisfying. I don't know why, y'all. I love removing the tape and seeing those clean lines. So yeah, go ahead and remove all of your tape very carefully. Try not to touch your glitter because it's still kind of wet. I'm just touching my tape only here and just pulling it directly off. If you can't get your tape up, you can use like an X-Acto knife or like a pick to kind of pull up the little pieces. That way you don't disturb the rest of the glitter. Here it is. I love the way this cup looks with the raw glitter by itself. So now I'm just going to take some Mod Podge and all of those glitters and touch up any spots that need to be touched up. There were some spots like in the corners that I needed to go over. So I just took a small paintbrush and some Mod Podge, dabbed it on that area, and then just went right back over it with glitter. Since we're doing repairs or like touch-ups, I'm going to go ahead and repair the bottom. Remember, I spray painted half of my bottom white and half of it blue. Well, I'm going to go over the bottom with a little bit of Mod Podge so that I can blend that line better. And just go over it with, and by adding that second layer of glitter to that white portion of the cup on the bottom, it does make a difference and it made it blend much better. And right here, we're just going to take a moment to appreciate the beauty of this cup. It's all raw glitter. It has not been sealed. I just think it's absolutely gorgeous. I love it. So I'm really worried about my colors mixing and the glitter spreading and all of that. So what I'm going to do is take the cup in and we're going to seal it using polyacrylic. I got this can, this little small can from Walmart. It's a mini wax polyacrylic protective finish, satin finish. I'm going to apply that all over my cup in a very thin layer, and that'll help ensure that the glitter doesn't shift and go into the other colors. So you want to just stir your polyacrylic really well, and it's going to be really thin and it's kind of cloudy, but that's normal. It will dry clear. I used foam brushes, one for each color, and I kind of just dabbed it on the color. You don't want it dripping, you don't want a lot. I kind of just dipped some in a cup and dabbed it on my glitter. And then I let my cup spin with this polyacrylic on it for a couple of hours until it was completely dry before we moved on to our first coat of epoxy. I also put this polyacrylic on the back half of the tumbler, the night sky. We don't want any of that glitter to move when we go to apply our epoxy. After our polyacrylic has dried, we're going to go ahead and cover our cup with epoxy. No special way of doing it. My glitter is all sealed in, so I'm just going to apply my epoxy all the way around my cup, let it spin overnight, use my torch to pop any bubbles, and then we'll move on to the next step. I did not have to go in with a second layer of epoxy because it was pretty smooth and all of the glitter is pretty fine. So after about a day, after it's hard to touch and cured, I'm going to go ahead and take it outside for sanding. I will be using my rotary sander to do the rim of the cup, as I always do. That just allows for a smoother finish in the end, and the epoxy will adhere to the outside of the cup instead of the very top. So if you haven't used a rotary sander before, you want to be very careful with this because you can ruin your cup. If you're not familiar with using a rotary sander, you can also use a piece of sanding paper or a sanding block to smooth around the lip portion of your cup. After I have finished the rim of my cup, I'm going to take a sanding block and just sand all the way around. We are about to apply decals, so I want to make sure my cup is 100% smooth, no bumps. After you're done sanding, you'll just take some rubbing alcohol and rub it down, and then you can wash it with some Dawn dish soap. Okay, so next I'm going to be applying my decals. I got this SVG on Etsy for the Practical Magic movie. So I have all of my decals cut out here, and we're going to go ahead and apply them. For the back nighttime section, I'm going to be applying like some trees, like a tree line and a moon and some bats. For my trees, I just did a Google search for spooky trees, and I found a tree that I like, and I just cut them down to the right size, which is about 4 inches across, and laid them down at the bottom. Now there is a little overlapping gap, but you won't see that under epoxy. So I'm just taking my X-Acto knife and making small slits at the bottom part to make sure it lies down all the way flat. Once I have my tree line down, I'm going to go ahead and add all my wording to the back sections. I am using permanent vinyl. And for the stripes, like where our painter's tape was, we're just going to go over that with some textured silver vinyl by Cricut. And you'll just follow that same line. I cut them out at 1/4 of an inch, which is the same as my painter's tape. So it matches up perfectly. And of course, you'll take your X-Acto knife and cut it where the end is. And you will repeat this process for all of your stripes. It should be 5 total, 3 going across the little ones and 2 long ones going across the sides. Once you have all of your stripes down, here's what your cup should look like. I absolutely love it. And now we're just going to add a few more details to that back section, the nighttime sky section. So next I'm going to add this Midnight Margarita Moon image that I kind of created in Silhouette Studio. I did a Google for spooky moons, and then I also found this, the Lady on the Witch, and added the words. So I kind of created the moon and did a print and cut. I'm going to go ahead and add that to the top here and press it down. And then I'm also going to just add a few bats all around the trees. I Googled a bat silhouette and just cut it out to the edge of it. And I'm just going to place 3 or 4 of them randomly on the cut. Now, we have added a lot of different decals to this cup, and I definitely don't want to risk the decals pulling up. So I'm going to go in, again, like the epoxy method, with only a fingertip full of epoxy, and I'm going to rub it across all of my decals. We are not going for full coverage. We are just trying to make sure those decals are sealed in. So I'm just kind of working my epoxy through all of those decals right here. I did not go over the printable vinyl because I don't want to risk it smearing, because we're having to rub so hard, kind of, because it's not that much epoxy. So just go ahead and rub around your decals, a very, very thin layer, and we'll let this spin for a couple of hours before we go in with a full coat of epoxy. That's another way of sealing your decals, is with a very, very thin layer of epoxy. So after that dried, I'm going to go ahead and go in with a full coat of epoxy. I know that my decals are not going to move because they're sealed in with that very first thin layer of epoxy. This should technically be your last coat of epoxy. If your cup still isn't smooth after this, you could add another coat. I am going in with my torch to make sure there's no bubbles. And that was pretty much it for this cup, guys. I don't think it's too complicated, and I love the way it turned out. It was actually a birthday gift ordered from my cousin for her friend who loves the movie Practical Magic. I just love how this cup turned out. So you guys let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.